There is a pattern that nobody talks about, and once you see it, you will see it everywhere. A child grows up in a home full of love. Two parents who stayed up worrying about them, who drove them to every practice, every appointment, every opportunity. Who said, "I love you" every single day, who meant it completely. And somewhere between that childhood and adulthood, something goes quiet inside that child. Not dramatic, not a breakdown, just a kind of lostness, a struggle to make decisions, a need for constant reassurance, an anxiety that never fully goes away, a life that somehow never quite starts. And the parents look at each other and cannot understand what happened. They gave everything. How did it still go wrong? Here's the part that makes this so hard to talk about. It didn't go wrong because those parents loved their child too little. It went wrong because of something that happens quietly, invisibly, inside a developing brain, when certain things are consistently done for a child that the child's brain needed to do for itself. Let's start with the one that surprised researchers the most. 1. Solving their problems made them helpless. When your child hits a problem, everything in you wants to fix it. A conflict with a friend, you intervene. A difficult homework problem, you guide them through every step. A frustrating situation, you smooth it over before it gets hard. You do this because you love them, and it works. The problem disappears, your child is comfortable again, and their brain just missed one of the most important developmental experiences it needed. Here's what neuroscience shows us about problem solving in childhood. Every time a child encounters a problem and works through it themselves, even imperfectly, even slowly, even with frustration, their prefrontal cortex is being trained. The neural pathways for independent thinking, decision-making, and resilience are being laid down through struggle, not through comfort. A landmark study from Columbia University followed children from age 4 through adolescence and found that children whose parents consistently intervened in problem-solving showed significantly lower tolerance for frustration, poorer independent decision-making, and higher rates of anxiety by their teenage years compared to children whose parents held back and let them work through age-appropriate challenges on their own. The painful truth is this: every problem you solve for your child is a problem their brain didn't get to solve, and a brain that never learns to solve problems doesn't suddenly develop that skill at 18 when the problems get real. It arrives at adulthood expecting someone to step in, and when no one does, it falls apart. The fix is not to stop caring, it's to change your role, from solver to supporter. What do you think you could try, instead of, "Here's what you should do"? It's a harder path in the moment. It's the only path that actually works. 2. Protecting them from failure taught them to fear it. Every parent wants to protect their child from pain. That instinct is not a flaw, it is love in its most primal form. But there is a specific kind of protection that has been quietly producing a generation of adults who are terrified to try anything they might not be good at immediately. Failure avoidance. When you praise everything equally, when you ensure your child always wins, when you remove the possibility of genuine failure from their environment, you are not building confidence. You are building a child whose entire sense of self depends on never failing. And that child will one day face something they cannot win: a rejection, a job they don't get, a relationship that ends. And their brain will have no framework for surviving it, because it never practiced. Research from Stanford's psychology department, building on Carol Dweck's decades of work on mindset, found that children who were shielded from failure in early childhood consistently showed what researchers call a performance orientation. They chose tasks they already knew they could complete over tasks that might teach them something new. Not because they lacked ability, because failing had become something to be feared rather than something to be learned from. A child who has failed at things and survived knows something that a protected child doesn't. They know that failure is not the end. That knowledge, that specific, embodied knowledge, is what allows adults to take risks, start businesses, have hard conversations, try again after something breaks. It is the foundation of courage. Let them fail at small things now, so they are not destroyed by big things later. That is not cruelty. That is the most protective thing you can do. And hey, if this is landing somewhere real for you right now, hit like and subscribe. This is exactly what more parents need to hear. 3. Constant availability made them unable to be alone. Think about how available you are to your child. Not physically present, emotionally available. The moment they are bored, you engage them. The moment they seem uncomfortable, you fill the silence. The moment they are alone with their own thoughts, you provide a screen, an activity, a distraction. You do this because boredom feels like a problem, because discomfort feels like something to solve. But here's what is being built inside a developing brain during moments of solitude, boredom, and unstructured quiet. The ability to be alone with oneself. This sounds simple. It is not. The capacity to sit with your own thoughts, to self-soothe without external input, to tolerate uncertainty without immediately reaching for distraction. These are some of the most sophisticated psychological skills a human being can develop. And they are built almost entirely in childhood, during the moments when nothing is happening. Psychologist Esther Buchholz spent decades studying what she called the need for alone time in human development. Her research found that children who regularly experience solitude, real solitude, not passive screen consumption, developed stronger inner lives, better emotional regulation, and a more stable sense of identity than children who were consistently stimulated and engaged. Because identity, it turns out, is not built in activity. It is built in the quiet between activities, when a child is alone with their own mind and learns what that mind contains. The adult who cannot be alone is the adult who needs constant validation, constant stimulation, constant noise to avoid sitting with themselves. That adult was a child whose silence was never allowed to breathe. Fill your child's every quiet moment and you take away the very experiences that build their inner world. 4. Telling them they were special made them fragile. This one is the hardest, because it comes from the purest place. You wanted your child to know their worth, so you told them, constantly, "You are amazing. You are the smartest. You are so special." And you meant every word. But here is what happens inside a developing brain when specialness becomes the dominant story. The world does not confirm that story. Teachers don't treat every child as the smartest. Friends don't defer to the most special child in the room. Jobs don't go to the most praised. And when the child who was told they were exceptional walks into a world that treats them as ordinary, the collision is devastating. Not because they are not worthy, but because their entire identity was built on a foundation that reality keeps contradicting. Research published in the Journal of Experimental Social Psychology found that children who received inflated praise that went beyond what their performance warranted, showed paradoxically lower resilience, higher rates of shame after failure, and more avoidance of challenging tasks than children who received accurate, effort-focused feedback. The reason is counterintuitive but important. Inflated praise teaches a child that their value is located in being exceptional, and exceptional is fragile. It can be taken away by a better grade, a more talented peer, a single failure. Whereas a child whose identity is built around effort, curiosity, and persistence has something that cannot be taken away, because those things belong entirely to them. Tell your child they worked hard. Tell them you noticed their effort. Tell them you are proud of how they kept going when it was difficult. That is praise that builds something real. 5. Rushing to comfort them taught them that discomfort is dangerous. Discomfort is not an emergency, but if you respond to it like one, your child's brain will learn to treat it like one. Every time your child experiences frustration, sadness, disappointment, or anxiety, and you rush in immediately to make it stop, you are training their nervous system. You are teaching it that this feeling is intolerable, that it must be escaped as fast as possible, that the correct response to discomfort is to find someone to remove it. That child becomes an adult who cannot tolerate waiting, who cannot sit with negative emotion, who reaches immediately for anything that numbs the feeling. Not because they are weak, because their nervous system was trained from the beginning to treat discomfort as a crisis. Research from the University of Denver on emotion coaching in early childhood found that children whose parents consistently validated and sat with their difficult emotions, rather than immediately redirecting or comforting them away, developed significantly stronger emotional regulation abilities by middle childhood. They showed lower rates of anxiety, better frustration tolerance, and more effective coping strategies when facing challenges. The alternative to rushing in is not abandonment, it is presence without rescue. Sitting next to your child while they cry without trying to stop the crying. Saying, "That really hurts, I'm here," instead of, "You're fine, stop crying." Letting the feeling exist long enough for their brain to learn that it can survive it. A child who learns that discomfort is survivable becomes an adult who is not destroyed by hard times. That is the goal. Not a childhood without pain. A childhood where pain is met with presence, not panic. 6. Living through them left them without a self. This last one is the quietest, the most invisible, and possibly the most damaging. When a parent's emotional investment in a child becomes so total that the parent's own happiness depends on the child's achievements, when every win is the parent's victory and every failure is the parent's wound, something happens to the child's developing sense of identity. It gets crowded out. The child learns, unconsciously, that their purpose is to be what their parent needs them to be, and they become very good at it. They perform, they achieve, they make their parent proud. And somewhere in the middle of all that performing, they lose track of who they actually are, what they actually want, what they actually feel, separate from what their parent needs them to feel. Psychologists call this enmeshment. And the children who grow up inside it often become the most accomplished, most outwardly successful, lost people you will ever meet. High functioning, impressive to everyone on the outside, and completely disconnected from themselves on the inside. Research on identity development in adolescence consistently shows that children who were given psychological space, whose parents supported their autonomy, tolerated their differences, and did not require them to mirror the parents' own dreams and anxieties, developed stronger, more stable identities, and reported higher life satisfaction in adulthood. Your child is not the place where your unlived life gets to happen. They are a separate person who needs room to find out who that person is. The most loving thing you can do is make that room. Step back, watch, let them surprise you. None of this makes you a bad parent. Every single one of these patterns comes from love, real, deep, genuine love. But love without awareness can build the very things it is trying to prevent. Helplessness instead of capability, fragility instead of resilience, lostness instead of direction. The difference between a child who grows up grounded and one who grows up lost is rarely about how much they were loved. It is almost always about what that love looked like in practice, whether it protected them from life or prepared them for it. You cannot go back and redo the early years, but you can change what happens tomorrow morning. In the moment you choose to let them struggle instead of stepping in the moment you sit beside their discomfort instead of rushing to erase it, in the moment you ask who they are instead of telling them who to be. Those moments are not small. They are everything. Subscribe to Mindful Parenting. We'll be here every week.